It is Rich Lieberman. It's a Thursday. I'm just getting word. Um, this is kind of difficult to talk about, but nevertheless, I've always stated that one of the reasons why you come here and one of the reasons why I do this show is that I talk about the news, even sometimes unpleasant news, and in this case, both news and developments. So I'm hearing through the grapevine, and I've posted some documents that Ron Owens, as you all know, and his wife Jan Black have been dealing with the case, the impending legal case involving their daughter, one of their daughters, Laura Owens, who's been indicted in the state of Arizona on perjury um, charges. And on Wednesday, the state held a notice that both Ron and Jan Black would be called as witnesses. Now, folks, I'm only talking about this, but because to ignore it would be rather ridiculous, and but would also explain why it's been difficult for me to get in touch. As many of you know, I've talked about this. Some of you have said, "Why you keep dredging this up?" Well, I'm not dredging it up. First off, it's in the news. Secondly, this is a major development. Now, I don't know the circumstances, and even if I did, I couldn't talk about it. I wouldn't. And it explains why Ron, I would imagine, and Jan Black have been mum lately, because there is an impending legal case, much less, of course, involving their own daughter, and they can't talk. And now I kind of semi get it, as if I didn't get it before. I did, but I found it extremely cumbersome that they couldn't talk, even off the record. But now I understand. I do not know the specific avenue to which they're going to be witnesses against their own daughter. I can't imagine it's going to be that they're going to testify. Um, People have asked me, to talk about this. Folks, when I started, and it was a coincidence that a few years back, I thought about apologizing to Ron for lambasting him, which I did, and lampooned him because I thought he really acted ridiculous and unprofessional, in my opinion, when KGO had its first demise under Cumulus. And I said so, and I was steamed. And I've relayed this a million times. You all know what my feelings were about Ron. But I thought about it, and a couple of years ago, I said, damn it, I'm just going to hopefully let bygones and be bygones and apologize, not for what I did, but overdoing it. And I felt bad because I knew Ron growing up. We had a bond together, and I knew him in a very special way as a person that I tremendously respected and loved, as a professional. Wanted to be a talk show host because of Ron Owens. Loved KGO, as many of you do and did, and was very, very upset and spent that he acted in the manner in which he did. So I decided to let bygones be bygones. And fortunately, Ron saw it, heard about it, and we sort of made peace. All the while, I did not know that the rather bizarre and, quite frankly, unsettling allegations with regards to his daughter began to emerge in May of 2023, to be exact. The allegations with regards to Laura Owens began to make their way into the public domain. And this is a case that has been going on for, God, a little over 2 years, well over 2 years now. And as I stated then and now, I just don't really get much into the Perez Hilton TMZ world. I mean, I glance like everybody else, but it's not my thing, folks. It really isn't. I had no idea what was going on with Ronn's daughter. And the more I read about it, the more I thought about it, I frankly, it was kind of SMH times 20th power. I shook my head over and over and said, wait a minute, this is not right. This smells to high heaven kind of a thing. And I still, frankly, I'm at a loss for words. I really, and it's hard to talk about this case and at the same time also try to be, dare I say, sympathetic to Ronn and to his wife, Jan Black. Because, and I've said this a million times, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I am not a father. I am childless, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like, what it is like to be in a position where my daughter is involved in this case. And now it's gone to a criminal court. And talk about awkward, talk about just feeling out and out exasperated, overwhelmed. So, look, and to be involved, but at the same time, and this is where it gets really difficult, folks, so bear with me here. I'm not dredging this up again. I'm bringing it up because we have sort of new developments, which I just announced. And this case has taken on a thing of its own. And you have the articles in the Chronicle and the Mercury News, Ronn asking for money via GoFundMe, in which they've raised almost $130,000 for ostensibly his medical maladies, which he's talked about. But then you have this case. Many of you have asked me what's going on. I've been accused, which is ridiculous, and I've talked about this a million times, accused that somehow I was silent because Ronn bought my silence, which is not the case, and all that. I vehemently say that it has not been the case whatsoever. I didn't talk about it, frankly, because I didn't get into the weeds of the specific case. I brought it up many a times now. I talked about it in March when the Chronicle article came out. I began saying, it would be difficult for me to sympathize with Ronn at that time when I basically lampooned him and belittled him for acting in the manner in which he did for the better part of 10 years. And then finding out subsequently when I made this public apology, let's kind of let bygones be bygones, Ron Owens, that the case with his daughter became so ingrained in our news. And I criticized the Chronicle, of which I have many, as many of you know, issues with, because I don't think they fulfill their journalistic whatever ethics that they regard by not talking about this, or at least bringing it up, until only an article a couple of weeks ago brought it up, but not even asking Ronn to talk about this at all. All the while, Ronn and Jan receiving upwards of $130,000, and the natural thought process many of you had, with good reason, I may add, where's this money going? And Ronn didn't specify. He alluded to health issues, Parkinson's disease, which he was diagnosed with. He's had bouts with cancer, he says, and all that. Yet his own union, SAG-AFTRA, and his situation pays for his medical expenses, lifetime. But not to bring up the issue involving Laura. And I understand totally, being a father, how awkward, how unseemly, how out and out unsettling this could be. I keep saying that, folks, because I don't want to gloss over that. I'm not Mr. Let's just rip somebody to rip somebody. And I don't know what is going on. And I myself said, both publicly and privately, before this development today, or actually was made yesterday in Arizona, with him being a witness with Jan Black against Laura Owens, their daughter. And I just don't know how to react to that. But I said the natural assumption amongst many of you people, which the Chronicle didn't want to ask, I guess, because they wanted whatever in deference to Ronn, where is this money going? Is it being used for the manner in which it was specified? Is it going to Ronn to help him deal with issues that he talked about in those articles? Or is it perhaps being funneled in a manner that would not be totally scrupulous, and that is for lawyers or legal things? That's a problem. How did my name came up? Again, I told you, people were saying that I got bought off. I have not been bought up. I brought this into the open. I've talked about it ad nauseum. In fact, I've talked to the various people who are in sympathy for one of the men that Laura Owens is accused of the outrageous, frankly, allegations, and now for which she has criminally been indicted for. I talked about it, have spoken about it. If you don't speak about it and you do something like this and you try to profess to be involved in news and all that, and if you don't talk about it, then you really shouldn't do a show like this. I'm sorry. So I'm stuck in a dilemma myself. That's number one. Number two, how do I react to this latest development? It's unbelievable. And whether or not there is another story here, and where's this money? And that's a lot of money. Not outrageous, but 125, whatever it is, 130,000. I haven't checked. I know that the money has been, less donated than it has in previous months. When that initial articles, there was a Mercury News article and a San Francisco Chronicle article, and then we had the latest article on June the 10th, in which case Ronn said, look, I need more money. And it doesn't specify in detail where is that money going to. And it's awkward. There's so many things to decipher here. And I don't want to, how can I put this? I don't want to belabor this to death, but on the other hand, this is news. And not talking about it would be as really ridiculous as whatever. I think I've made clear my familiarity with this. I think I've outlined this. And in fact, I got a call last night from some of the people that, for whatever reason, they have a name. It's Justice for Clayton Eckert. I think I said his name was Richard in a back broadcast. His name is Clayton Eckert. And he's the guy that was on the contestant with The Bachelor. And he's, I guess, going to be on a Netflix upcoming series. Has nothing to do with the case, but he was one of the main guys that was involved in the Laura Owens allegations, and which is now in an Arizona legal process and all that. So, look, I think. Well, let me just deal with each case individually. I have, other than what I've read, I don't know the specific issues I've heard. I've talked to somebody from the Justice for Clayton Rickard, the people who are trying to show sympathy and are working for this guy. I don't say working like they're getting paid, but they're on his behalf. I know about them. I've spoken to them. They've actually inferred that they maybe want to talk to me about doing an interview. And I told them I have no issue talking about this now, but I really don't know specifically, other than what I've read about the case with regards to Ron and Jan. For lack of a better things to say, I don't know what I could say. It must be one hell of a situation to be in. Now, the second thing, which to me is the awkward thing here, folks, it really is, and that is, where's the money going, or at least where is some of the money going, or whatever. And I actually asked this to Ron himself back in March, and Jan Black, his wife. I said, guys, and this was before the June 10th article in the Chronicle, and before this latest legal development. There's a lot of people out there who think, you guys, Ron, Jan, that this money is being asked for in part because you need to pay the lawyers. They told me at the time, folks, some of you, I may be repeating myself, but we're in a second by second world culture that we're in. So forgive me for saying this, but a lot of people tune in and out, that kind of a thing. They vehemently denied anything. They told me that the lawyer that they were that was representing their daughter was working free, pro bono. I believe them. But then we have the June 10th article in the Chronicle. And then we had illustrations pointed out to me about his particular situation with regards to expenses, medical expenses, and that he had a pretty good pension. I brought up the fact that, and the pension covered his medical bills, 24/7, rest of his life kind of a deal. And I hadn't spoken about this since March. Again, it's the world in which we live in. Oh, Lieberman, you must have been paid off. No, I wasn't paid off at all. And they laughed about that. Of course they did. But then we had, as I reacted to the Chronicle piece, and I said, now really something smells to high heaven here. You owe it if you're going to publicly ask for money in a GoFundMe page. You kind of have to say, and they're sort of in a catch-22 themselves. So I'm not defending Ron here. I'm not speaking for Ron, but they have an impending legal case with regards to their own daughter. And I get all that. He agreed, and I asked him to come on my show and to talk about his career and all that. And he begged me not to talk about Laura Owens, for which I agreed to. But then thought about it and said, wait a minute. I cannot not discuss the Laura Owens deal. So I've posted some documents, which you'll see, and it is part of the public domain. Where is the money going? It's a very legit question. And I frankly, he's going to have to address that eventually, I would think. And for the record, once again, I have been calling. I stopped calling now because it's apparent they're not talking. They being Ron and Jan Black, his wife. And they have a reason, and that it's all now in the legal domain. And look, folks, it pains me that this has reached such critical nature in which it has. I think we'll eventually, people have asked me, well, what do you think is going to happen with the criminal case? I have no idea. Plea deal has been talked about. People have told me, I told you I spoke to somebody that is representing in terms of public sympathy, and, a woman that I spoke to who is representing, not a legal representative with Clayton Rickard, and they are adamant that they are doing this based on their belief that he's been really royally screwed and reputation wise and all that. So, I ain't going to get into that. I'll let the legal process take care of itself in that regard. So I have no opinion on that. My thing is the money in the GoFundMe, which again, amazingly, San Francisco Chronicle, you do an article and you don't ask Ronn. I'm not going to even refer to the author. You don't ask Ronn himself, hey, where's the money going? Can you categorically deny the feeling out there that you're using this money, or some of it at least, to pay lawyers? That wasn't specified in the original articles. They didn't ask that. And they still haven't really brought this about. And I find that to be puzzling. I find it to be outrageous. And look, it's inconvenient. So that's where we're at now. I don't know where this is headed, but I would like every one of you, I'd like to get some clarity on a lot of these questions, and perhaps, we'll get some clarity eventually. There'll be some legal outcome. I don't know. As I said, I don't know whether a plea deal is in hand. I don't know. Again, the whole thing with them now testifying, or it really is unbelievable. So I did address this now, and by not addressing it would not have been right. So there you have it, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.